Organs and viscera redirect here. For other uses, see organs, disambiguation, and viscera, disambiguation. Organ. Many of the internal organs of the human body. Details. System organ systems. Identifiers. Greek Omicron Rho Gamma Alpha Nu Omicron. FMA 67498. Anatomical terminology. Edit on Wikidata. In a multicellular organism, an organ is a collection of tissues joined in a structural unit to serve a common function. 1. In the hierarchy of life, an organ lies between tissue and an organ system. Tissues are formed from same-type cells to act together in a function. Tissues of different types combine to form an organ which has a specific function. The intestinal wall, for example, is formed by epithelial tissue and smooth muscle tissue. 2. Two or more organs working together in the execution of a specific body function form an organ system, also called a biological system or body system. An organ's tissues can be broadly categorized as parenchyma, the functional tissue, and stroma, the structural tissue with supportive, connective, or ancillary functions. For example, the glands tissue that makes the hormones is the parenchyma, whereas the stroma includes the nerves that innervate the parenchyma, the blood vessels that oxygenate and nourish it and carry away its metabolic wastes, and the connective tissues that provide a suitable place for it to be situated and anchored. The main tissues that make up an organ tend to have common embryologic origins, such as arising from the same germ layer. Organs exist in most multicellular organisms. In single-celled organisms such as bacteria, the functional analog of an organ is known as an organelle. In plants, there are three main organs. 3. In the study of anatomy, viscera, SG, viscus, refers to the internal organs of the abdominal, thoracic, and pelvic cavities. 4. The abdominal organs may be classified as solid organs or hollow organs. The solid organs are the liver, pancreas, spleen, kidneys, and adrenal glands. The hollow organs of the abdomen are the stomach, intestines, gallbladder, bladder, and rectum. 5. In the thoracic cavity, the heart is a hollow, muscular organ. 6. The number of organs in any organism depends on the definition used. By one widely adopted definition, 79 organs have been identified in the human body. 7. Animals. See also, List of organs of the human body and biological system. The liver and gallbladder of a sheep. Except for placozoans, multicellular animals including humans have a variety of organ systems. These specific systems are widely studied in human anatomy. The functions of these organ systems often share significant overlap. For instance, the nervous and endocrine system both operate via a shared organ, the hypothalamus. For this reason, the two systems are combined and studied as the neuroendocrine system. The same is true for the musculoskeletal system because of the relationship between the muscular and skeletal systems. Cardiovascular system, pumping and channeling blood to and from the body in lungs with heart, blood and blood vessels. Digestive system, digestion and processing food with salivary glands, esophagus, stomach, liver, gallbladder, pancreas, intestines, colon, mesentery, rectum and anus. Endocrine system, communication within the body using hormones made by endocrine glands such as the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, pineal body or pineal gland, thyroid, parathyroids and adrenals, i.e., adrenal glands. Excretory system, kidneys, ureters, bladder and urethra involved in fluid balance, electrolyte balance and excretion of urine. Lymphatic system, structures involved in the transfer of lymph between tissues and the bloodstream, the lymph and the nodes and vessels that transport it including the immune system, defending against disease-causing agents with leukocytes, tonsils, adenoids, thymus and spleen. Integumentary system, skin, hair and nails of mammals. Also scales of fish, reptiles, and birds, and feathers of birds. Muscular system, movement with muscles. Nervous system, collecting, transferring and processing information with brain, spinal cord and nerves. Reproductive system, the sex organs, such as ovaries, fallopian tubes, uterus, vulva, vagina, testes, vas deferens, seminal vesicles, prostate and penis. Respiratory system, the organs used for breathing, the pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, lungs and diaphragm. Skeletal system, structural support and protection with bones, cartilage, ligaments and tendons. Viscera. In the study of anatomy, viscera, singular viscus, refers to the internal organs of the abdominal, thoracic, and pelvic cavities. 4. The abdominal organs may be classed as solid organs or hollow organs. The solid organs include the liver, pancreas, spleen, kidneys, and adrenal glands. The hollow organs include the stomach, intestines, gallbladder, bladder, and rectum. 5. In the thoracic cavity, the heart is a hollow, muscular organ. 6. Splanchnology is the study of the viscera. 8. The term visceral is contrasted with the term parietal, meaning of or relating to the wall of a body part, organ, or cavity. 9. The two terms are often used in describing a membrane or piece of connective tissue, referring to the opposing sides. 10. Origin and evolution. Relationship of major animal lineages with indication of how long ago these animals shared a common ancestor. On the left, important organs are shown, which allows us to determine how long ago these may have evolved. The organ level of organization in animals can be first detected in flatworms and the more derived phyla, i.e. the bilaterians. The less advanced taxa, i.e. Placozoa, Porifera, Ctenophora and Cnidaria, do not show consolidation of their tissues into organs. More complex animals are composed of different organs, which have evolved over time. For example, the liver and heart evolved in the chordates about 550 to 500 million years ago, while the gut and brain are even more ancient, arising in the ancestor of vertebrates, insects, mollusks, and worms about 700 to 650 million years ago. Given the ancient origin of most vertebrate organs, researchers have looked for model systems, where organs have evolved more recently, and ideally have evolved multiple times independently. An outstanding model for this kind of research is the placenta, which has evolved more than 100 times independently in vertebrates, has evolved relatively recently in some lineages, and exists in intermediate forms in extant taxa. 11. Studies on the evolution of the placenta have identified a variety of genetic and physiological processes that contribute to the origin and evolution of organs. These include the repurposing of existing animal tissues, the acquisition of new functional properties by these tissues, and novel interactions of distinct tissue types. 11. Plants. See also, plant morphology, plant anatomy, and plant physiology. The flower is the angiosperm's reproductive organ. This hibiscus flower is hermaphroditic and it contains stamen and pistils. Strobilus of Equisetum telmatia. The study of plant organs is covered in plant morphology. Organs of plants can be divided into vegetative and reproductive. Vegetative plant organs include roots, stems, and leaves. The reproductive organs are variable. In flowering plants, they are represented by the flower, seed and fruit. Citation needed. In conifers, the organ that bears the reproductive structures is called a cone. In other divisions, phyla, of plants, the reproductive organs are called strobili, in Lycopodiophyta, or simply gametophores in mosses. Common organ system designations in plants include the differentiation of shoot and root. All parts of the plant above ground, in non-epiphytes, including the functionally distinct leaf and flower organs, may be classified together as the shoot organ system. 12. The vegetative organs are essential for maintaining the life of a plant. While there can be 11 organ systems in animals, there are far fewer in plants, where some perform the vital functions, such as photosynthesis, while the reproductive organs are essential in reproduction. However, if there is asexual vegetative reproduction, the vegetative organs are those that create the new generation of plants. See clonal colony. Society and culture. Many societies have a system for organ donation, in which a living or deceased donor's organ are transplanted into a person with a failing organ. The transplantation of larger solid organs often requires immunosuppression to prevent organ rejection or graft versus host disease. There is considerable interest throughout the world in creating laboratory-grown or artificial organs. Citation needed. Organ transplants. Beginning in the 20th century, 13 organ transplants began to take place as scientists knew more about the anatomy of organs. These came later in time as procedures were often dangerous and difficult. 14 Both the source and method of obtaining the organ to transplant are major ethical issues to consider, and because organs as resources for transplant are always more limited than demand for them, various notions of justice, including distributive justice, are developed in the ethical analysis. This situation continues as long as transplantation relies upon organ donors rather than technological innovation, testing, and industrial manufacturing. Citation needed. History. Human viscera. Icon. This section needs expansion. You can help by adding to it. February 2018. The English word organ dates back to the 12th century and refers to any musical instrument. By the late 14th century, the musical term's meaning had narrowed to refer specifically to the keyboard-based instrument. At the same time, a second meaning arose, in reference to a body part adapted to a certain function. 15. Plant organs are made from tissue composed of different types of tissue. The three tissue types are ground, vascular, and dermal. 16. When three or more organs are present, it is called an organ system. 17. The adjective visceral, also splanchnic, is used for anything pertaining to the internal organs. Historically, viscera of animals were examined by Roman pagan priests like the haruspices or the augurs in order to divine the future by their shape, dimensions, or other factors. 18. This practice remains an important ritual in some remote, tribal societies. The term visceral is contrasted with the term parietal, meaning of or relating to the wall of a body part, organ, or cavity. 9. The two terms are often used in describing a membrane or piece of connective tissue, referring to the opposing sides. 19. Antiquity. Aristotle used the word frequently in his philosophy, both to describe the organs of plants or animals, e.g. the roots of a tree, the heart or liver of an animal, and to describe more abstract parts of an interconnected whole, e.g. his logical works, taken as a whole, are referred to as the organon. 20. Some alchemists, e.g. Paracelsus, adopted the Hermetic Kabbalah assignment between the 7 vital organs and the 7 classical planets as follows. 21. Planet organ. Sun heart. Moon brain. Mercury lungs. Venus kidneys. Mars gallbladder. Jupiter liver. Saturn spleen. Element yang organ. Wood liver. Yang gallbladder. Fire heart. Yang small intestine sanjiao. Earth spleen. Yang stomach. Metal lungs. Yang large intestine. Water kidneys. Yang bladder. The Chinese associated the 5 elements with the 5 planets, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Saturn, and Mercury, similar to the way the classical planets were associated with different metals. The yin and yang distinction approximates the modern notion of solid and hollow organs. In music, the organ is a keyboard instrument of one or more pipe divisions or other means for producing tones. The organs have usually 2 or 3, up to 5 manuals, for playing with the hands, and pedal board, with the feet. With the use of registers, several groups of pipes can be connected to one manual. Types of organs. Varieties of organs include pipe organs, which use air moving through pipes to produce sounds. The air is supplied by bellows, an electric motor or water organ. Since the 16th century, pipe organs have used various materials for pipes, which can vary widely in timbre and volume. Increasingly hybrid organs are appearing in which pipes are augmented with electric additions. Non-piped organs, which include pump organs, also known as reed organs or harmoniums, which like the accordion and mouth organs, both Eastern and Western, notably the harmonica, which use air to excite free reeds. Electronic organs, both analog and digital, notably the Hammond organ, which generate electronically produced sound through one or more loudspeakers. Mechanical organs, which include the barrel organ and orchestrion. These are controlled by mechanical means such as pinned barrels or book music. Little barrel organs dispense with the hands of an organist, and bigger organs are powered in most cases by an organ grinder or today by other means such as an electric motor. History. Predecessors. Panpipes. Hydraulis. Portative. Positive. Regal before the 16th century. Regal after the 16th century. 1. Predecessors to the organ include panpipes, pan flute, syrinx, and nai, etc., are considered as ancestor of the pipe organ. Aulos, an ancient double reed instrument with 2 pipes, is the origin of the word hydraulis, water aerophone. Origins. Depiction of an organ in the Utrecht Psalter. The organ is a relatively old musical instrument, dating from the time of Ctesibius of Alexandria, 285 to 222 BC, who invented the water organ. It was played throughout the ancient Greek and ancient Roman world, particularly during races and games. 3. During the early medieval period it spread from the Byzantine Empire, where it continued to be used in secular, non-religious, and imperial court music, to Western Europe, where it gradually assumed a prominent place in the liturgy of the Catholic Church. 3. Subsequently, it re-emerged as a secular and recital instrument in the classical music tradition. Early organs. Early organs include 3rd century BC, the hydraulis, ancient Greek water-powered organ played by valves. 4. 1st century, at least the Terra and the Terran, an ancient Roman organ similar in appearance to the portative organs. 5. 2nd century, the Magrepha, ancient Hebrew organ of 10 pipes played by a keyboard. 6, 7, 8. 8th century, Pippin's organ of 757, Carolingian dynasty, was sent as a gift to the West by the Byzantine Emperor Constantine v. 9. 9th century, the automatic flute player, and possibly automatic hydro-powered organ, a mechanical organ by the Banu Musa brothers, citation needed. Medieval organs. Medieval organs include portative organ, a small portable medieval instrument. Positive organ, a somewhat larger though still portable instrument. Regal, a portable late medieval instrument with reed pipes and bellows, forerunner of the harmonium and reed organ. Pipe organs. Main article, pipe organ. 4th century AD mosaic of the female musicians showing a woman playing organ from a Byzantine villa in Mariamene, Syria. 10. Pipe organ music sample. 146. Improvisation in E, played on the organ located in the St. George's Minster in the town of Dinkelspool. Problems playing this file? See media help. The pipe organ is the largest musical instrument. These instruments vary greatly in size, ranging from a cubic meter to a height reaching 5 floors, 11, and are built in churches, synagogues, concert halls, and homes. Small organs are called positive, easily placed in different locations, or portative, small enough to carry while playing. The pipes are divided into ranks and controlled by the use of hand stops and combination pistons. Although the keyboard is not expressive as on a piano and does not affect dynamics, it is binary. Pressing a key only turns the sound on or off. Some divisions may be enclosed in a swell box, allowing the dynamics to be controlled by shutters. Some organs are totally enclosed, meaning that all the divisions can be controlled by one set of shutters. Some special registers with free reed pipes are expressive. It has existed in its current form since the 14th century, though similar designs were common in the Eastern Mediterranean from the early Byzantine period, from the 4th century AD, and precursors, such as the hydraulic organ, have been found dating to the late Hellenistic period, 1st century BC. Along with the clock, it was considered one of the most complex human-made mechanical creations before the Industrial Revolution. Pipe organs range in size from a single short keyboard to huge instruments with over 10,000 pipes. A large modern organ typically has 3 or 4 keyboards, manuals, with 5 octaves, 61 notes, each, and a 2.5 octave, 32-note, pedal board. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart called the organ the king of instruments. 12. Some of the biggest instruments have 64-foot pipes. A foot here means sonic foot, a measure quite close to the English measurement unit, citation needed, and it sounds to an 8 Hz frequency fundamental tone. Perhaps the most distinctive feature is the ability to range from the slightest sound to the most powerful, plangent impressive sonic discharge, which can be sustained in time indefinitely by the organist. For instance, the Wanamaker organ, located in Philadelphia, U.S., has sonic resources comparable with 3 simultaneous symphony orchestras. Another interesting feature lies in its intrinsic polyphony approach. Each set of pipes can be played simultaneously with others, and the sounds mixed and interspersed in the environment, not in the instrument itself. Church. Most organs in Europe, the Americas, and Australasia can be found in Christian churches. The introduction of church organs is traditionally attributed to Pope Vitalian in the 7th century, citation needed, due to its simultaneous ability to provide a musical foundation below the vocal register, support in the vocal register, and increased brightness above the vocal register. The organ is ideally suited to accompany human voices, whether a congregation, a choir, or a cantor or soloist. Most services also include solo organ repertoire for independent performance rather than by way of accompaniment, often as a prelude at the beginning of the service and a postlude at the conclusion of the service. Today this organ may be a pipe organ, see above, a digital or electronic organ that generates the sound with digital signal processing, DSP, chips, or a combination of pipes and electronics. It may be called a church organ or classical organ to differentiate it from the theater organ, which is a different style of instrument. However, as classical organ repertoire was developed for the pipe organ and in turn influenced its development, the line between a church and a concert organ became harder to draw. Concert hall. In the late 19th century and early 20th century, symphonic organs flourished in secular venues in the United States and the United Kingdom, designed to replace symphony orchestras by playing transcriptions of orchestral pieces. Symphonic and orchestral organs largely fell out of favor as the Orgelbewegung, organ reform movement, took hold in the middle of the 20th century, and organ builders began to look to historical models for inspiration in constructing new instruments. Today, modern builders construct organs in a variety of styles for both secular and sacred applications. Theater and cinema. Main article, Theater organ. Theater organ in state cinema, Gray's. Compton organ. The theater organ or cinema organ was designed to accompany silent movies. Like a symphonic organ, it is made to replace an orchestra. However, it includes many more gadgets, such as mechanical percussion accessories and other imitative sounds useful in creating movie sound accompaniments such as auto horns, doorbells, and bird whistles. It typically features the tibia pipe family as its foundation stops and the regular use of a tremulant possessing a depth greater than that on a classical organ. Theater organs tend not to take nearly as much space as standard organs, relying on extension, sometimes called unification, and higher wind pressures to produce a greater variety of tone and larger volume of sound from fewer pipes. Unification gives a smaller instrument the capability of a much larger one, and works well for monophonic styles of playing, chordal, or chords with solo voice. The sound is, however, thicker and more homogeneous than a classically designed organ. In the U.S., the American Theater Organ Society, ATOS, has been instrumental in programs to preserve examples of such instruments. Chamber organ. Chamber organ by Pasquale Catano Oldavini, 1762. A chamber organ is a small pipe organ, often with only one manual, and sometimes without separate pedal pipes, that is placed in a small room, that this diminutive organ can fill with sound. It is often confined to chamber organ repertoire, as often the organs have too few voice capabilities to rival the grand pipe organs in the performance of the classics. The sound and touch are unique to the instrument, sounding nothing like a large organ with few stops drawn out, but rather much more intimate. They are usually tracker instruments, although the modern builders are often building electro-pneumatic chamber organs. Pre-Beethoven keyboard music may usually be as easily played on a chamber organ as on a piano or harpsichord, and a chamber organ is sometimes preferable to a harpsichord for continuo playing as it is more suitable for producing a sustained tone. Non-piped organs. Reed or pump organ. Main article, pump organ. See also, squeeze box. A harmonium. Operation of the two large pedals at the bottom of the case supplies wind to the reeds. The pump organ, reed organ or harmonium, was the other main type of organ before the development of the electronic organ. It generated its sounds using reeds similar to those of an accordion. Smaller, cheaper and more portable than the corresponding pipe instrument, these were widely used in smaller churches and in private homes, but their volume and tonal range was extremely limited. They were generally limited to one or two manuals, they seldom had a pedal board. Harmonium or parlor organ, a reed instrument, usually with several stops and 2-foot-operated bellows. American reed organ, similar to the harmonium, but that works on negative pressure, sucking air through the reeds. Melodeon, a reed instrument with an air reservoir and a foot-operated bellows. It was popular in the U.S. in the mid-19th century. This should not to be confused with the diatonic button accordion, which is also known as the melodeon. The chord organ was invented by Lawrence Hammond in 1950-13. It provided chord buttons for the left hand, similar to an accordion. Other reed organ manufacturers have also produced chord organs, most notably Magnus from 1958 to the late 1970s. 14. Electronic organs. Main article, electric organ. Since the 1930s, pipeless electric instruments have been available to produce similar sounds and perform similar roles to pipe organs. Many of these have been bought both by houses of worship and other potential pipe organ customers, and also by many musicians, both professional and amateur, for whom a pipe organ would not be a possibility. Far smaller and cheaper to buy than a corresponding pipe instrument, and in many cases portable, they have taken organ music into private homes and into dance bands and other new environments, and have almost completely replaced the reed organ. Hammond. Main article, Hammond organ. Hammond B3 organ. With Leslie cabinet. Medley. 327. Medley played with a 1935's Hammond organ with Leslie cabinet. Problems playing this file? See media help. The Hammond organ was the first successful electric organ, released in the 1930s. It used mechanical, rotating tone wheels to produce the sound waveforms. Its system of drawbars allowed for setting volumes for specific sounds, and it provided vibrato-like effects. The drawbars allow the player to choose volume levels. By emphasizing certain harmonics from the overtone series, desired sounds, such as brass or string, can be imitated. Generally, the older Hammond drawbar organs had only preamplifiers and were connected to an external, amplified speaker. The Leslie speaker, which rotates to create a distinctive tremolo, became the most popular. Though originally produced to replace organs in the church, the Hammond organ, especially the Model B3, became popular in jazz, particularly soul jazz, and in gospel music. Since these were the roots of rock and roll, the Hammond organ became a part of the rock and roll sound. It was widely used in rock and popular music during the 1960s and 1970s by bands like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Procol Harum, Santana and Deep Purple. Its popularity resurged in pop music around 2000, in part due to the availability of clone wheel organs that were light enough for one person to carry. Allen. Main article, Allen organ. In contrast to Hammond's electromechanical design, Allen Organ Company introduced the first totally electronic organ in 1938, based on the stable oscillator designed and patented by the company's founder, Jerome Markowitz. 15. Allen continued to advance analog tone generation through the 1960s with additional patents. 16. In 1971, in collaboration with North American Rockwell. 17. Allen introduced the world's first commercially available digital musical instrument. The first Allen digital organ is now in the Smithsonian Institution. 18. Other analog electronic. A Vox Continental combo organ. Frequency divider organs used oscillators instead of mechanical parts to make sound. These were even cheaper and more portable than the Hammond. They featured an ability to bend pitches. In the 1940s until the 1970s, small organs were sold that simplified traditional organ stops. These instruments can be considered the predecessor to modern portable keyboards, as they included one-touch chords, rhythm and accompaniment devices, and other electronically assisted gadgets. Lowrey was the leading manufacturer of this type of organs in the smaller, spinet, instruments. In the 1960s and 1970s, a type of simple, portable electronic organ called the combo organ was popular, especially with pop, ska, in the late 1970s and early 1980s, and rock bands, and was a signature sound in the rock music of the period, such as The Doors and Iron Butterfly. The most popular combo organs were manufactured by Farfisa and Vox. Conselmer and Rogers, dominant in the market for larger instruments, also made electronic organs that used separate oscillators for each note rather than frequency dividers, giving them a richer sound, closer to a pipe organ, due to the slight imperfections in tuning. Hybrids, starting in the early 20th century. 19. Incorporate a few ranks of pipes to produce some sounds, and use electronic circuits or digital samples for other sounds and to resolve borrowing collisions. Major manufacturers include Allen, Walker, Compton, Wicks, Marshall and Ogletree, Phoenix, Macon Organs, Wyvern Organs and Rogers. Digital. A modern digital organ, Nord Electro 2, utilizing modeling and DSP technology. The development of the integrated circuit enabled another revolution in electronic keyboard instruments. Digital organs sold since the 1970s utilize additive synthesis, then sampling technology, 1980s, and physical modeling synthesis, 1990s, are also utilized to produce the sound. Virtual pipe organs use MIDI to access samples of real pipe organs stored on a computer, as opposed to digital organs that use DSP and processor hardware inside a console to produce the sounds or deliver the sound samples. Touchscreen monitors allows the user to control the virtual organ console. A traditional console and its physical stop and coupler controls is not required. In such a basic form, a virtual organ can be obtained at a much lower cost than other digital classical organs. Mechanical organs. Barrel organ. Orchestrion from Germany. Band organ from USA. Fairground organ. Dutch street organ. Dance organ from Belgium. Mechanical organs include barrel organ, made famous by organ grinders in its portable form, the larger form often equipped with keyboards for human performance. Organette, small, accordion-like instrument manufactured in New York in the late 1800s. Novelty instruments or various types that operate on the same principles. These pipe organs use a piano roll player or other mechanical means instead of a keyboard to play a prepared song. Orchestrion. Fairground organ or band organ in the USA. Dutch street organ. Dance organ. The wind can also be created by using pressurized steam instead of air. The steam organ, or calliope, was invented in the United States in the 19th century. Calliopes usually have very loud and clean sound. Calliopes are used as outdoors instruments, and many have been built on wheeled platforms. Music. Organ in St. Giles Cathedral. This section needs additional citations for verification. Please help improve this article by adding citations to reliable sources in this section. Unsourced material may be challenged and removed. November 2022, learn how and when to remove this template message. Classical music. Main article, Organ Repertoire. The organ has had an important place in classical music, particularly since the 16th century. Spain's Antonio de Cabazon, the Netherlands' Jan Pietersen Sweelinck, and Italy's Girolamo Frescobaldi were three of the most important organist composers before 1650. Influenced in part by Sweelinck and Frescobaldi, the North German school rose from the mid-17th century onwards to great prominence, with leading members of this school having included Buxtehude, Franz Tunder, George Bohm, George Philipp Telemann, and above all Johann Sebastian Bach, whose contributions to organ music continue to reign supreme. During this time, the French classical school also flourished. François Couperin, Nicolas Lebègue, André Raison, and Nicolas de Grigny were French organist composers of the period. Bach knew Grigny's organ output well, and admired it. In England, Handel was famous for his organ playing no less than for his composing. Several of his organ concertos, intended for his own use, are still frequently performed. After Bach's death in 1750, the organ's prominence gradually shrank, as the instrument itself increasingly lost ground to the piano. Nevertheless, Felix Mendelssohn, César Franck, and the less famous A.P.F. Boehly, all of whom were themselves expert organists, led, independently of one another, a resurgence of valuable organ writing during the 19th century. This resurgence, much of it informed by Bach's example, achieved particularly impressive things in France, even though Franck himself was of Belgian birth. Major names in French Romantic organ composition are Charles-Marie Widor, Louis Vierne, Alexander Guilmant, Charles Tournemire, and Eugene Gigout. Of these, Vierne and Tournemire were Franck pupils. In Germany, Max Reger, late 19th century, owes much to the harmonic daring of Liszt, himself an organ composer, and of Wagner. Paul Hindemith produced 3 organ sonatas and several works combining organ with chamber groups. Siegfried Kargelert specialized in smaller organ pieces, mostly chorale preludes. Among French organist composers, Marcel Dupré, Maurice Durufel, Olivier Messiaen and Jean Langley made significant contributions to the 20th century organ repertoire. Organ was also used a lot for improvisation, with organists such as Charles Tournemire, Marcel Dupré, Pierre Cochereau, Pierre Pinsmail and Thierry Escaich. Some composers incorporated the instrument in symphonic works for its dramatic effect, notably Mahler, Holst, Elgar, Scriabin, Respighi, and Richard Strauss. Saint-Saëns's Organ Symphony employs the organ more as an equitable orchestral instrument than for purely dramatic effect. Poulenc wrote the sole organ concerto since Handel's to have achieved mainstream popularity. Because the organ has both manuals and pedals, organ music has come to be notated on 3 staves. The music played on the manuals is laid out like music for other keyboard instruments on the top 2 staves, and the music for the pedals is notated on the 3rd stave or sometimes, to save space, added to the bottom of the 2nd stave as was the early practice. To aid the eye in reading 3 staves at once, the bar lines are broken between the lowest 2 staves, the brace surrounds only the upper 2 staves. Because music racks are often built quite low to preserve sightlines over the console, organ music is usually published in oblong or landscape format. Jazz. Electronic organs and electromechanical organs such as the Hammond organ have an established role in a number of popular music genres, such as blues, jazz, gospel, and 1960s and 1970s rock music. Electronic and electromechanical organs were originally designed as lower-cost substitutes for pipe organs. Despite this intended role as a sacred music instrument, electronic and electromechanical organs' distinctive tone often modified with electronic effects such as vibrato, rotating Leslie speakers, and overdrive became an important part of the sound of popular music. The electric organ, especially the Hammond B3, has occupied a significant role in jazz ever since Jimmy Smith made it popular in the 1950s. It can function as a replacement for both piano and bass in the standard jazz combo. The Hammond organ is the centerpiece of the organ trio, a small ensemble which typically includes an organist, playing melodies, chords and basslines, a drummer and a third instrumentalist, either jazz guitar or saxophone. In the 2000s, many performers use electronic or digital organs, called clonewheel organs, as they are much lighter and easier to transport than the heavy, bulky B3. Popular music. A modern digital Hammond organ in use. Performers of 20th-century popular organ music include William Rowland, who composed Piano Rags, George Wright, 1920–1998, and Virgil Fox, 1912–1980, who bridged both the classical and religious areas of music. Church-style pipe organs are sometimes used in rock music. Examples include Tangerine Dream, Rick Wakeman, with Yes and Solo, Keith Emerson, with The Nice and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, George Duke, with Frank Zappa, Dennis DeYoung, with Styx, Arcade Fire, Muse, Roger Hodgson, formerly of Supertramp, Natalie Merchant, with 10,000 Maniacs, Billy Preston and Iron Butterfly. Artists using the Hammond organ include Bob Dylan, Counting Crows, Pink Floyd, Hootie and the Blowfish, Sheryl Crow, Vulfpeck, Sly Stone and Deep Purple. Sport. Nancy Faust playing at Guaranteed Rate Field, home of the Chicago White Sox. In the United States and Canada, organ music is commonly associated with several sports, most notably baseball, basketball, and ice hockey. The first baseball team to introduce an organ was the Chicago Cubs, who put an organ in Wrigley Field as an experiment in 1941 for 2 games. Ebbets Field, home of the Brooklyn Dodgers, hired baseball's first full-time organist, Gladys Gooding. Over the years, many ballparks caught on to the trend, and many organists became well-known and associated with their parks or signature tunes. Organ, biology, a group of tissues organized to serve a common function. Musical instruments. Organ, music, a family of keyboard musical instruments characterized by sustained tone. Electronic organ, an electronic keyboard instrument. Hammond organ, an electromechanical keyboard instrument. Pipe organ, a musical instrument that produces sound when pressurized air is driven through a series of pipes. Fairground organ, an automatic mechanical organ designed to provide loud music in fairground settings. Street organ, a mobile, automatic mechanical pneumatic organ played by an organ grinder. Theater organ, a pipe organ originally designed specifically for imitation of an orchestra. BBC theater organ, several theater organs used for popular BBC radio programs. Films. Organ, film, a 1996 Japanese film about organ thieves. The Organ, film, a 1965 Slovak film. Periodicals. Organ, any official periodical, i.e., magazine, newsletter, or similar publication, of an organization. Organ, magazine, a UK music magazine founded in 1986. The Organ, magazine, a quarterly publication for organ enthusiasts, founded in 1921. The Organ, newspaper, an underground newspaper published in San Francisco from 1970 to 1972. Places. United States. Organ, New Mexico, an unincorporated community. Organ Mountains, New Mexico. The Organ, Zion, a summit in Utah. Organ Rock Formation, in Utah, New Mexico and Arizona. Organ Cave, Virginia. Elsewhere. Organ Peak, Graham Land, Antarctica. Serra dos Orgueiros, or Organ Range, a mountain range in Brazil. Organ, Hautes-Pyrénées, a commune in France. Organ, Iran, a village in Kaharmahal and Bakhtiari Province, Iran. Organ-e-Cord, a village in Kazvin Province, Iran. Organ-e-Torque, a village in Kazvin Province, Iran. Other uses. Organ, a division within an organization, for example, organs of United Nations. Organs of state, branches of power within a government. Organ, an old word for a mental faculty, particularly in the context of phrenology. Organ, a slang word for a penis. Organ, surname, a list of people with the surname. The Organ, band, a Canadian rock band 2001 to 2006. Organ, album, a 2021 album by Dimension. Organ, in biology, a group of tissues in a living organism that have been adapted to perform a specific function. In higher animals, organs are grouped into organ systems, example, the esophagus, stomach, and liver are organs of the digestive system. In the more advanced animals, there are usually 10 organ systems, integumentary, skeletal, muscular, nervous, endocrine, hormonal, digestive, respiratory, circulatory, excretory, and reproductive. These systems appear gradually in the lower animals and attain their full complexity and functional specialization in the higher animals. In plants, the primary organs are the stem, root, and leaf, all of which help to nourish the plant, and the reproductive organs, example, flowers, seed, and spores. As with animals, these organs are responsible for the basic life-sustaining functions of the organism. Microglia, type of neuronal support cell, neuroglia, occurring in the central nervous system of invertebrates and vertebrates that functions primarily as an immune cell. Microglia were first identified by histological staining with silver carbonate between 1919 and 1921 by Spanish neuroanatomist Pío del Río Ortega, who was a student of Spanish histologist Santiago Ramón y Cajal, best known for his work in establishing neurons as the basic units of nervous tissue. As the name microglia suggests, these cells are small, the smallest of all the neuroglia. Microglia nuclei are typically oval-shaped, and projecting out from their cell bodies are slender elongated processes that enable the cells to move via chemotaxis, movement along a chemical gradient. For many years the function of microglia was unclear. However, today it is known that these cells mediate immune responses in the central nervous system by acting as macrophages, clearing cellular debris and dead neurons from nervous tissue through the process of phagocytosis, cell eating. The embryonic origin of microglia is distinct from other types of neuroglia. Whereas other neuroglia are derived from an embryonic layer of tissue known as neuroectoderm, which gives rise to nervous tissue, microglia are derived from embryonic mesoderm, which gives rise to cells of the blood and immune system. In developmentally mature organisms, microglia also can be generated from white blood cells known as monocytes that circulate in the blood and move into the central nervous system. Microglia are activated by inflammation in the central nervous system, which may be triggered by neurological degenerative disorders such as Alzheimer's disease or by infectious diseases such as Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. Research suggests that microglia can help delay the progression of diseases in the brain that are caused by infectious particles known as prion by eliminating prion-damaged cells. David Hunter Hubel, born February 27, 1926, Windsor, Ontario, Canada, died September 22, 2013, Lincoln, Massachusetts, U.S., Canadian-American neurobiologist, co-recipient with Torsten Nils Wiesel and Roger Walcott Sperry of the 1981 Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine. All three scientists were honored for their investigations of brain function, with Hubel and Wiesel sharing half of the award for their collaborative discoveries concerning information processing in the visual system. Hubel attended McGill University in Montreal, receiving a bachelor's degree in 1947 and an MD in 1951. He held positions at the Montreal Neurological Institute, Johns Hopkins Hospital, where his association with Wiesel began, and the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, before joining the faculty of Harvard Medical School, along with Wiesel, in 1959. They began collaborating on research that same year. One of their outstanding achievements was the analysis of the flow of nerve impulses from the retina to the sensory and motor centers of the brain. Using tiny electrodes, they tracked the electrical discharges that occur in individual nerve fibers and brain cells as the retina responds to light and the patterns of information are processed and passed along to the brain. In 1965, Hubel became professor of physiology and, in 1968, George Packer Berry Professor of Neurobiology. He co-wrote, with Wiesel, Brain Mechanisms of Vision, 1979, and Brain and Visual Perception, The Story of a 25-Year Collaboration, 2004. His other works include The Visual Cortex of the Brain, 1963, The Brain, 1984, with Francis Crick, and I, Brain, and Vision, 1988. Hubel and Wiesel were also awarded, with Vernon Mountcastle of Johns Hopkins, the 1978 Louisa Gross Horwitz Prize for their research on discerning the structural and functional elements of the visual cortex. Odor, also spelled odor, the property of certain substances, in very small concentrations, to stimulate chemical sense receptors that sample the air or water surrounding an animal. In insects and other invertebrates and in aquatic animals, the perception of small chemical concentrations often merges with perception via contact of heavy concentrations, taste, and with other chemoreceptive specializations. See also smell. Pylorus, cone-shaped constriction in the gastrointestinal tract that demarcates the end of the stomach and the beginning of the small intestine. The main functions of the pylorus are to prevent intestinal contents from re-entering the stomach when the small intestine contracts and to limit the passage of large food particles or undigested material into the intestine. The internal surface of the pylorus is covered with a mucous membrane lining that secretes gastric juices. Beneath the lining, circular muscle tissue allows the pyloric sphincter to open or close, permitting food to pass or be retained. The sphincter remains in an open or relaxed state 2/3 of the time, permitting small quantities of food to pass into the duodenum, the upper portion of the small intestine. When the duodenum begins to fill, pressure increases and causes the pyloric sphincter to contract and close. Muscular contractions, peristaltic waves, in the duodenum then push food deeper into the intestine. Because the pyloric sphincter is relatively narrow, only small amounts of well-emulsified food can pass through it even while it is open. Surgical removal of the valve does not significantly affect the gastric emptying of the stomach. The term pylorus is used to refer to the pyloric sphincter and can also be applied to that portion of the stomach immediately above the pyloric sphincter. Soleus muscle, a flat, broad muscle of the calf of the leg lying just beneath the gastrocnemius muscle. It arises from the upper portions of the tibia and fibula, the bones of the lower leg, and then joins with the gastrocnemius to attach via the Achilles tendon at the heel. Its major action is flexion of the ankle joint, particularly when the leg is bent at the knee, thereby extending the foot downward. Neuron, also called nerve cell, basic cell of the nervous system in vertebrates and most invertebrates from the level of the cnidarians, example, corals, jellyfish, upward. A typical neuron has a cell body containing a nucleus and 2 or more long fibers. Impulses are carried along one or more of these fibers, called dendrites, to the cell body. In higher nervous systems, only one fiber, the axon, carries the impulse away from the cell body. Bundles of fibers from neurons are held together by connective tissue and form nerves. Some nerves in large vertebrates are several feet long. A sensory neuron transmits impulses from a receptor, such as those in the eye or ear, to a more central location in the nervous system, such as the spinal cord or brain. A motor neuron transmits impulses from a central area of the nervous system to an effector, such as a muscle. Chyme, a thick semi-fluid mass of partially digested food and digestive secretions that is formed in the stomach and intestine during digestion. In the stomach, digestive juices are formed by the gastric glands. These secretions include the enzyme pepsin, which breaks down proteins, and hydrochloric acid. Once food is in the small intestine, it stimulates the pancreas to release fluid containing a high concentration of bicarbonate. This fluid neutralizes the highly acidic gastric juice, which would otherwise damage the membrane lining of the intestine, resulting in a duodenal ulcer. Other secretions from the pancreas, gallbladder, liver, and glands in the intestinal wall add to the total volume of chyme. Muscular contractions of the stomach walls help to mix food and digestive substances together in forming chyme. As particles of food become small enough, they are passed at regular intervals into the small intestine. Once in the intestine, more enzymes are added and mixing continues. When food particles are sufficiently reduced in size and composition, they are absorbed by the intestinal wall and transported to the bloodstream. Some food material is passed from the small intestine to the large intestine, or colon. In the colon, chyme is acted upon by bacteria that break down the proteins, starches, and some plant fibers not totally digested by the other organs. In both the small and the large intestine, water is normally absorbed so the chyme gradually gets thicker. As chyme passes through the stomach and intestine, it picks up cellular debris and other types of waste products. When all of the nutrients have been absorbed from chyme, the remaining waste material passes to the end of the large intestine, the sigmoid colon and rectum, to be stored as fecal matter until it is ready to be excreted from the body. Note of Ranvier, periodic gap in the insulating sheath, myelin, on the axon of certain neurons that serves to facilitate the rapid conduction of nerve impulses. These interruptions in the myelin covering were first discovered in 1878 by French histologist and pathologist Louis-Antoine Ranvier, who described the nodes as constrictions. The myelin sheath consists of concentric layers of lipids, including cholesterol and variable amounts of cerebrosides and phospholipids, separated by thin layers of protein. This arrangement gives rise to a high-resistance, low-capacitance electrical insulator. However, nodes of Ranvier interrupt the insulation at intervals, and this discontinuity enables impulses to jump from node to node in a process known as saltatory conduction. Nodes of Ranvier are approximately 1 micrometer wide and expose the neuron membrane to the external environment. These gaps are rich in ion channels, which mediate the exchange of certain ions, including sodium and chloride, that are required to form an action potential, the reversal of electrical polarization of the neuron membrane that initiates or is part of a wave of excitation that travels along the axon. The action potential propagated by one node of Ranvier jumps to and is regenerated at the next node along the axon, thereby enabling the action potential to travel rapidly along the fiber. Phagocytosis, process by which certain living cells called phagocytes ingest or engulf other cells or particles. The phagocyte may be a free-living one-celled organism, such as an amoeba, or one of the body cells, such as a white blood cell. In some forms of animal life, such as amoebas and sponges, phagocytosis is a means of feeding. In higher animals, phagocytosis is chiefly a defensive reaction against infection and invasion of the body by foreign substances, antigens. Early observations. The presence of foreign particles within cells was first described in the 1860s by pathologist Kronid Slavjinsky. In the 1880s, Russian-born zoologist and microbiologist Ilya Mechnikov introduced the term phagocyte in reference to immune cells that engulf and destroy foreign bodies such as bacteria. Mechnikov also recognized that phagocytes play a major role in the immune response, a discovery that earned him a share of the 1908 Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine. Types of phagocytes. Observe the human immune response phagocytosis, in which leukocytes ingest or engulf invading microscopic organisms or particles. Observe the human immune response phagocytosis, in which leukocytes ingest or engulf invading microscopic organisms or particles. See all videos for this article. The particles commonly phagocytosed by white blood cells include bacteria, dead tissue cells, protozoa, various dust particles, pigments, and other minute foreign bodies. In humans, and invertebrates generally, the most effective phagocytic cells are two kinds of white blood cells, the macrophages, large phagocytic cells, and the neutrophils, a type of granulocyte. The macrophages occur especially in the lungs, liver, spleen, and lymph nodes, where their function is to free the airways, blood, and lymph of bacteria and other particles. Macrophages also are found in all tissues as wandering amoeboid cells, and the monocyte, a precursor of the macrophage, is found in the blood. The smaller phagocytes are chiefly neutrophils that are carried along by the circulating blood until they reach an area of infected tissue, where they pass through the blood vessel wall and lodge in that tissue. Both macrophages and neutrophils are drawn toward an area of infection or inflammation by means of substances given off by the bacteria and the infected tissue or by a chemical interaction between the bacteria and the complement system of blood serum proteins. Neutrophils may also engulf particles after colliding with them accidentally. Particle adherence. Examine stained images distinguishing phagocytes from bacteria during phagocytosis. Examine stained images distinguishing phagocytes from bacteria during phagocytosis. See all videos for this article. Before phagocytosis is accomplished, the phagocyte and the particle must adhere to each other, the possibility of which depends largely on the chemical nature of the surface of the particle. In the case of bacteria, if the phagocyte cannot adhere directly, protein components of the blood known as opsonins, example, complement and antibodies, form a surface film on bacteria, a process known as opsonization. Phagocytes adhere to the opsonins, and phagocytosis follows. Encapsulated bacteria are ingested with more difficulty. In the absence of specific antibodies that recognize the bacteria, opsonization cannot occur, and the bacteria repel phagocytes. The surfaces of such bacteria are coated with special antibodies only after the body has mounted an immune response to the presence of that particular kind of bacterium. Such antibodies are of great importance in establishing immunity to diseases. Particle engulfment and digestion. MRSA and neutrophil. MRSA and neutrophil. The speed with which a phagocytic cell ingests a particle varies somewhat with the size of the particle. Small particles, such as bacteria or minute grains of charcoal, are ingested almost instantaneously. Larger objects, such as clumps of bacteria or tissue cells, are phagocytosed over the course of a more prolonged response. The cell flows around the object until it has been completely engulfed. The engulfed object is thus enclosed within a membrane-bound vacuole, called a phagosome. The phagocyte digests the ingested particle with hydrolytic enzymes, which are contained within membrane-enclosed sacs, called lysosomes, found within the cell. Phagocytic enzymes are secreted into the vacuole in which digestion takes place. Small organic components of the particle are used to build larger molecules needed by the cell. Organ definition. An organ is a self-contained group of tissues that performs a specific function in the body. The heart, liver, and stomach are examples of organs in humans. The word organ comes from the Latin organum, which means instrument. This in turn comes from the Greek word rho gamma alpha nu omicron nu, organon, which refers to a musical instrument or organ of the body. Organs are found in most animals and plants. Examples of organs. All animals except for less specialized ones like those in the phylum Porifera, sea sponges, have specialized tissues grouped into organs. The human body has 78 different organs. The largest organ is the skin, while the smallest organ is the pineal gland, which produces the hormone melatonin. Some organs are necessary for survival. These are called vital organs. Humans have 5 vital organs that they cannot live without: the brain, heart, liver, kidneys, and lungs. A person can live with 1 kidney instead of 2, or 1 lung, but they must have 1 working kidney or lung to survive. Other organs perform important functions, but a person can live without them. For example, if a person has stomach cancer and undergoes a total gastrectomy, their entire stomach is removed, and their esophagus is surgically connected to their small intestine. They may suffer some hardships and may have to alter their diet by eating smaller meals and taking nutritional supplements, but they can still digest food in their intestines just fine, and can therefore live without a stomach. Other examples of non-essential organs include the bladder, spleen, and gallbladder. Some organs are vestigial, meaning that they perform little or no function in the body. Evolutionarily, over time, they have become unnecessary. The appendix, a small tube connected to the large intestine that can sometimes become inflamed and require removal, has been widely thought to be vestigial. It no longer has a significant role in digestion. However, it does still play a role in immune functioning and maintaining good gut bacteria. Although we may think of plants as being simpler than animals, plants also have organs. This includes reproductive organs such as stamens and pistils, contained in flowers, roots, stems, and leaves. Each of these organs performs specialized tasks such as reproduction, absorbing nutrients from the soil, and performing photosynthesis. Cells, tissues, organs, organ systems. There are 4 different levels of organization in multicellular organisms, and organs make up one of these levels. From simplest to complex, an organism is made up of cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems. Cells make up the most basic level of organization. The cell is the building block of a living organism. This is followed by tissues. Tissues are groups of cells that work together and have a similar structure and function. The 4 types of tissues in the human body are muscle, epithelial, connective, and nervous tissue. Organs, as stated before, are groups of tissues that work together to perform a certain function. Organ systems represent the highest level of an organism's bodily organization. They are made up of groups of organs that work together in order to carry out a certain function. For example, the digestive system includes organs such as the esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and large intestine, and all of these organs play a role in the digestion of food. Types of organs. The body's organs are grouped into organ systems based on the functions they perform. Humans have 11 different organ systems. Here are all of the organ systems with some examples of organs found in each system. Integumentary, skin, hair, nails. Skeletal, bones. Muscular, smooth, cardiac, and skeletal muscles. Circulatory, heart, arteries, veins. Respiratory, lungs, diaphragm, larynx. Digestive, stomach, intestines, liver. Urinary, kidneys, ureters, bladder. Immune, lymph nodes, bone marrow, thymus. Nervous, brain, spinal cord, nerves. Endocrine, pituitary gland, thyroid, adrenals. Reproductive, penis, vagina, prostate, uterus. This image depicts parts of the circulatory system, including the heart, arteries, and veins. Vein. Related biology terms. Tissue, a specialized group of cells that look similar and perform a specific function. Groups of similar tissues make up organs. Organ system, a group of organs that works together to carry out a certain function. Humans have 11 organ systems. Vestigial organ, an organ that has evolutionarily lost its original function over time, and presently has little or no function in an organism. The appendix has been widely believed to be vestigial throughout history, although it does have a role in immune functioning.